Ladies and gentlemen, you beautiful people of the flock, welcome back to Downloadable Content. My name is SJ, and I am without Alex today. But today, I would like to talk about something a little bit concerning from Nintendo. Let's get right into it. Okay, so before I get into this, I have to announce that Alex has left us. But don't worry. There's a little bit of truth to the clickbait, and that is that he has left us, but just temporarily for the summer. He's gonna be going to. He's got this internship going on. I'm not gonna say any details because I don't know how much of that information he wants out there, but I'm very excited for him. And he's taking off this week, and unfortunately, he is unable to record until he gets settled in over there. But he is taking his mic, and we will be doing some remote recording sessions, so don't worry. Quick little gaming update from myself. I have been playing this game called Grand Blue Fantasy Relink, and oh my gosh, it has been a blast. It is just it's an action JRPG. You can build your team. You've got a team of 4 characters. The end game content is superb. The campaign itself is about 10 to 15 hours. I've finished the campaign. I'm kind of in the end game, grinding out some materials, building my team. It's just a lot of fun, and I'm playing it with my good friend Jordan. Shout out to Jordan for introducing me to this game, and I've been hooked. I've just been totally hooked. I was playing Jedi Survivor before Jordan convinced me to buy that game, so eventually I'm gonna have to finish up Relink and then go back to playing Jedi Survivor. But anyway, the main topic of today is Nintendo's updated end user license agreement, or the account user agreement. They updated some language. So, according to one of the YouTubers that I follow, and I found some other articles that discuss this exact same thing, they have made the agreement, at least in the US, quite a bit more restricting than it was before. And it's a little bit concerning, and I want to talk about it. This is a topic where I'd love to hear some feedback from you guys. But let me pull that up here. If you are audio only, don't worry, I'll read this out loud for you. If you're watching video, you can follow along on the page. As you can see here, I've got this pulled up. This is accounts.nintendo.com/term/EULA/US. I have heard that this is quite a bit different for Europe. I think Europe probably has some more consumer protection stuff going on, but okay, so just to set the stage here, this is an important agreement that applies to your use of the Nintendo account services. So if you have a Nintendo account, or you use, you play online on your Switch or whatever, this applies to you. The part I want to get to is license right here. Now I'm gonna read this off. Okay, subject to the terms of this agreement, Nintendo grants you a non-exclusive, non-transferable, revocable license to use the Nintendo account services solely for your personal and non-commercial use. For clarity, the Nintendo account services are licensed, not sold, to you, and you may not make use of the Nintendo account services except as expressly authorized by this agreement. Okay. that makes sense to me, right? The Nintendo account services, we don't own those services. We have a license to you that use their services, so I don't see any issue with that. Sorry, just scrolling up a little bit. Okay, next. Without limitation, you agreed that you may not A. Publish, copy, modify, reverse engineer, lease, rent, decompile, disassemble, distribute, offer for sale, or create derivative works of any portion of the Nintendo account services. B. Bypass, modify, decrypt, defeat, tamper with, or otherwise circumvent any of the functions or protections of the Nintendo account services, including through the use of any hardware or software that would cause the Nintendo account services to operate other than in accordance with its documentation and intended use. C. Obtain, install, or use any unauthorized copies of Nintendo account services. Or D. Exploit the Nintendo account services in any manner other than to use them in accordance with the applicable documentation and intended use. So basically, that's saying, hey, you can't use our stuff for purposes that's not for purposes that we didn't intend. That's basically what that's saying, right? And based on this language, this applies to hardware too. So this isn't just the online service like I was saying earlier. This means the hardware as well. So they're saying, hey, if you do any of this stuff to any of our software or hardware, you are not abiding by the license agreement. Okay. Let me get back to it here. Okay, so D, to exploit the Nintendo account services in any manner other than to use them in accordance with the applicable documentation and intended use. In each case, without Nintendo's written consent or express authorization, or unless otherwise expressly permitted by applicable law. So they're saying, hey, you can't do any of this stuff unless we give you written authorization to do so, or if it's permitted by law. So if you have a legal right to do one of these things that they listed, it's okay. And then they go on to say, you acknowledge that if you fail to comply with the foregoing restrictions, Nintendo may render the Nintendo account services and or the applicable Nintendo device, in other words, your Switch or Switch 2, permanently unusable in whole or in part. So agreeing to this end user license agreement basically gives, and you have to agree in order to use the Switch or the Switch 2 that's coming out very soon. If you don't abide by this, Nintendo has the right to just brick your Switch. What that would mean in practical terms is, for example, the Switch 1, the very first generation, there was an exploit discovered and it was able to be hacked and used to load emulators onto it and do things that Nintendo didn't want you to do. So you could put game emulators, play different console games, do whatever the hardware could do, right? If you were to do anything like that, Nintendo, assuming that they have some way of detecting that, maybe in the upcoming Switch 2, they could brick your console, in other words, make it completely unusable, according to this agreement. Okay, before I kind of get into my opinion on this, let me scroll up a little bit. So there is also a note here. That we are not allowed to sue them through class action lawsuits. And if you're not aware, a class action lawsuit is where a whole bunch of people, typically consumers, kind of combine forces against someone like Nintendo and sue them, with their combined resources rather than a single individual going after Nintendo. And class action lawsuits it's honestly a really good way for kind of the masses to be able to have checks and balances, for huge corporations like Nintendo, because a lot of times, just in legal fees alone, a single person could just get drowned, in legal fees, and they just don't really stand a chance. Sony has recently faced some class action lawsuits, that they've taken some losses in, and I think this is just Nintendo's way of making sure that, hey, if you have an issue with us, you have to arbitrate with us on our home turf, basically, um, through arbitration rather than going through the legal system or the courts. So these two things combined is a little bit concerning in my mind. So, to play devil's advocate, I understand where Nintendo is coming from with this, because their Switch one was hacked. They've had video game leaks and stuff, and I think this is their way of deterring people from hacking the Switch 2, if there is a way for it to be hacked when it comes out, and to make sure that the use of all of their stuff, hardware included, is in line with how they intend it to be. Which, that philosophy in and of itself, I don't think is bad, but I think where they cross a line is when they say, okay, well, if you use it in a manner that we didn't intend, say you hack the Switch 2 that you bought with your own money, we have the right to just make that Switch 2 completely unusable. That I personally take issue with, because, I mean, imagine buying a computer, okay? You buy a computer, let's say a laptop, to keep things simple. You bought a laptop, $500. You decide, you know what? I want to upgrade some of the internals. So you get into it, you open it up, maybe you put upgraded storage in there, or maybe you decide to switch over from Windows to Linux or whatever. And then because you agreed to that laptop manufacturer's end user license agreement, they detect that you modified their hardware, or you're running Linux on it rather than Windows, and they just completely brick your laptop, and it's unusable. It's just dead. Maybe they got a remote switch or something where they can just detect that and just kill your system. And now you're out of a laptop. I don't think that's okay. I would honestly love to see this challenged in court, because I honestly don't know. So, like, the thing to know with license agreements and contract and stuff that you agree to, even if you agree to something, that doesn't necessarily mean that that agreement is legal. For example, this is very extreme, and I'm not saying this is what Nintendo's doing, but I could draw up a contract, say with Alex, and say, hey, Alex, there's this guy that you really don't like. Let's draw up a contract. I will promise that I will kill this person, and you will pay me $10,000 for it. And then we both sign at the bottom. Well, that contract is not enforceable by law, because it's an illegal thing that I've put into the contract to kill somebody. So, very, very extreme case, but my point is, if what Nintendo is imposing upon the consumers here is found to be um, too much or illegal in court, um, you know, they would have to change this. And I personally don't think that this is okay. So I think one scenario in which something like this would be applicable is like a rental car or like any rental service for that matter, right? So if you by going with that scenario that I was talking about earlier, if you were to rent a laptop, you just needed one for the weekend or something. Actually, there are rental computer services, and then you do anything to it that they don't want you to do, you know, the assumption would be, okay, well, you got to pay a fee, compensate them, give it back, all this stuff, right? And that makes sense because that's still their property. You're just renting it, you're borrowing it. It's not your hardware. When you buy a Nintendo Switch or Nintendo Switch 2, you're buying that thing, you know? Um, and so it's now your property. Why should you not be allowed to do whatever you want with it? And I'm not condoning like piracy or anything, right? And we shouldn't get into any of that nasty stuff, but like if I want to hack my Switch 1, which I've been wanting to do for a while and I've just been waiting for the Switch 2 to come out. If I want to hack my Switch 1 so I can like, put my legally obtained Game Boy ROMs on there and play different games or turn it into a Android tablet or something, like I should be able to do that. Um, and I think it's fair to say like, hey, if you do this, if you hack your Switch, we're gonna terminate you from like online. Like you can't go online because that impacts like other players and stuff. Like I think like that kind of stuff I would totally be in support of. Um, but I don't I just I'm appalled that they're saying that this applies to the hardware as well. That's just crazy to me. That's just crazy to me. Um, I mean, imagine you buy a car, right? You buy a car and then, you know, you hack it or whatever to do things that it couldn't do before. You I don't know, maybe it's an old car, so you install like a Bluetooth stereo system. Um, maybe you put like a little GPS screen on it or whatever, so it has like greater capabilities and whatnot. And then the manufacturer detects that, and then, oh, we're gonna kill your car because you're using it in ways that we didn't intend for you to do. What? I mean, it doesn't, it just, I don't think those are like the punishment that they're imposing on people is not equivalent to what the people would be doing with this thing. I think it's another thing if they're like, hey, if we ever detect that you're doing anything, if you're doing piracy, or I don't know, in my mind, like, if I'm not hurting Nintendo, right? Why can't I do what I want with the hardware that I bought with my money? That I'm not renting, I bought it. I don't get that. And I guess like you could argue that, well, hacking the console and emulation like that hurts Nintendo because that's less time playing their games and stuff. But like you could say the same thing about anything. Okay, well sure, then if I can't hack my Switch, then I'm just gonna play on my play Game Boy games on my hacked PSP instead, right? That's still time from away from playing on the Switch 2 too. Like it's not like I don't know. Um Let me know your thoughts on this below in the comments. Um in the Discord, obviously, that's a great place. I'm just really concerned with this, and I haven't reviewed um the EU version or the Europe version of this. I don't think their version is as strict as this, where it's saying, "Hey, we can just kill your Switch." Um, I take issue with that. Um, I don't know. I really think that like Nintendo is a business. They're there to make money, right? We've said this before, and I'm all for them protecting their own IPs. Doing um, making sure that people aren't infringing on their copyright and all of that stuff. That's understandable. As much as it might be unpopular, but I think they went too far with this. I really do. And I don't think this is going to change. Um, and I think a lot of people are going to say, well, if you never do this stuff, you never have to worry about it. And even if you do, like, say the Switch 2 is hackable and I hack it, well, if you don't go online, like, they're never going to know. Um, so what's the big deal? The big deal is that they're putting this in a license agreement. And the big deal is that they can make your Nintendo device permanently unusable and whole. Um, it kind of sets a dangerous precedence. And I personally do not think that uh, this would really be enforceable if it was taken to court. It just seems so extreme. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I'm not a big fan of this. Um, I'm okay with $80 games. I think they're expensive. I think a lot of people aren't going to be able to afford it, but it is what it is, right? And if you don't think $80 is worth it, then don't buy it. Right? Like vote with your money, vote with your money. And I think vote with your money applies to like most video game stuff. But um this kind of puts you in a chokehold until you agree to their terms. Because the Switch 2 is going to come in the mail, in a few weeks. And I didn't know that this was going to be a thing that was in the agreement. My wife's back there. She's like, "Oh, time out." I can't time out. What is it?
The leftovers from mom's house are not in the fridge.
Oh no.
Did you take it out of the trunk?
There's a good chance that I may have rotting food in the back of my car, but I'm going to tackle that issue in just a.
Sorry, you're gonna leave the rotting.
I'll open the trunk. I'll open the trunk, okay? All right, trunk's open.
Wild.
Um, Crap. I really hope that's not the case. Oh my gosh. Anyway, what was I saying? Anyway, I don't think this is acceptable. Oh, yeah. So, Nintendo is forcing you to agree to this. And if you don't agree to them, you'd have to just not play the Switch too, right? Or use the Switch too. Like I've already bought it. I've already pre-ordered it. Um and reality is, right? Like people are going to just click agree. Like nobody reads through this stuff. That's the thing. Is like there's a lot of just kind of legal jargon in here. And um you know what I mean? Like you don't really have an alternative. You don't have an option. You have to agree, or, you know, you just have to. So anyway, I've talked long enough about this. So let me know your thoughts. I'm pretty sure Alex will be back next time. Um, Look up Grand Blue Fantasy Relink. It's a game that's like a year old, and like the online, like people aren't playing online anymore, but you can play co-op, and it's like super fun. It's great. But anyway, I'm gonna talk to you guys next time. And before I close out, I just want to give a quick shout out to all of our supporters. We have our Down Earth Cockatiels, Joshua, Matthew, and Tyler. Very grateful. And our Down Earth Parakeets. We got Jay Maurer, Nicholas, and Noah. So thank you, champs, for keeping this train going. And I didn't think they would go this far, but I really shouldn't be surprised because Nintendo is very protective of their stuff. But I'm not happy with this. But I'm gonna call Nintendo's bluff right now. If the Switch 2 ever gets hacked, I don't think they will enforce this, or I don't think it will be enforceable. So my guess is this is in here to deter people from hacking the Switch and doing stuff they don't want you to do. But I don't think they're actually gonna be able to take any action against someone that does hack the Switch. One, because they probably don't have a way of detection if the Switch is completely hacked at the root level. And two, if they did, I think they would be in some legal trouble to just say, hey, oh, your Switch is dead completely. I think that is too far. But I hope I'm right on that. And I do plan on hacking my Switch 1. And the original Switch, this agreement does apply to that, from what I understand. So if anything crazy happens to me, I'll be sure to update you. But I'm not going to hack my Switch until I get the Switch 2 first and get everything transferred over. But anyway, love you guys. Talk to you next time.